Hey, what is the good word today? You are in for a really special treat, folks. I have a great author, sales specialist, sales sage, if you will. That would be Lee Salz. He is the author of Sales Differentiation and Sell Different. Phenomenal books. I've read Sales Differentiation with a sales team a number of years ago, and it just helped the sales grow. And it's just so awesome. And what Lee talks about, highly recommend the books, but even better, we've got him here today. Lee Salz, what is the good word?
It's all good, Harry. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, it's so great to see you here. So Lee, tell me,
Yes.
what does sell different mean to you?
What a great way to start the conversation. So, as you mentioned, my two books, Sales Differentiation and Sell Different. As you know, the first half of Sales Differentiation is differentiating what you're selling. And of course, there's limits to that, right? There's only so much you can do to differentiate that widget. But when we look at differentiating how we sell, the opportunities are limitless. When you look at every stage, every step of the buying journey, and challenge yourself with this question: what is it that I can do different than the competition that my buyers will find meaningful? It can't be different for the sake of different. I mean, I could have come on here, Harry, wearing my wife's beach hat. I'm sure you haven't had a guy come in and do that. Would have been different, not necessarily meaningful to our audience. And so the whole foundation premise of all of the sales differentiation is to win more deals, prices you want. And we look at sell different. It's looking at a buying journey. For example, the experience, the buying experience, how someone's buying from you. You know, we look at those who we conduct business with. There are those who we say, boy, I love conducting business with them. And others, well, not so much. And price isn't the reason. It's how they make us feel when we're conducting business with them. For example, my dad passed away in December, and he had an accounting background, always did his taxes. And so this year we used a friend in my mom's neighborhood, CPA, to do their taxes. And he did a fine job, no issues with that, but so snarky. Every time you talk with him, he made you feel like an idiot. So he's fired. We're not using him anymore. Not because of the job he did, but how he made us feel when interacting with him. So those are all examples of what I'm referring to when you look at how you sell different.
Oh, it's so good. As I was reading pieces of your book here, parts and pieces and pages, it's hard to put it down because it's just jam-packed. I mean, the how-to guides, this strategy, the tactical awareness of what you have written in your book is so good. And I highly
You're very kind. But Harry, I'm going to let you in a little secret.
Okay.
I haven't shared this on another podcast. I hate to read. I hate it. I didn't say I don't do it. I do it religiously, but I fundamentally hate it. I don't do it for enjoyment. So here's my rule when I write a book. I won't write a book that I personally wouldn't sit down and read myself.
Oh, beautiful.
So yeah, I appreciate your kind words.
Yeah, it's sort of like a speaker. Any speaker who is forcing an audience to listen to him speak should also sit in the audience and listen to him speak, right?
Very true. Very true.
That will get rid of the 10-point fonts and the 80 slides. So
that's exactly right.
Right. So this whole thing about how people feel, I think, is often missed in selling, where people who are selling worry about what they're going to say. They're worried about getting the sale. They're worried about what is the closing strategy here. And all along throughout the whole selling cycle, if you will, they're not thinking about the most important person. What's your thought on that?
Well, I'm going to share with you that this is unique to me. You ready, Harry?
Yes, I'm ready.
People buy on emotion and justify their decision with logic. That's my thing. No, that's been around since the beginning in sales. If you've been in sales for 5 minutes, you've heard that expression.
Exactly.
But if I recorded 100 sales calls and I looked for that in motion, that the salespeople are using emotion in that sales call, maybe one out of that 100 would you be able to tangibly experience that emotional transformation. Doesn't happen. And I got to think, well, why don't salespeople do that? And there's a couple of reasons, I think. One is they buy into it and they forget. By the way, I need to have that here. Everything is around factual conversation, or they genuinely don't know how to do it in an appropriate fashion. I think that's a part of it as well. I'm working on a new book focused on the discovery stage of the sales process, that first consultation. And the other day, I was thinking about my favorite show, Law and Order. Have you ever seen Law and Order?
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Watched
there
it a
was this
million
episode.
times, I think.
Well, there was an episode where the district attorney was talking to the prosecutor. And he said, here's the problem with your case. It's all fact and no heart, and the jury isn't buying it.
Mm.
I'm like, ooh, that's really interesting. So I got to thinking, I'm like, I wonder how attorneys use emotion in the courtroom to affect jury decisions. So as research for my new book, I've interviewed a judge, a prosecutor, a trial attorney, and someone who trains trial attorneys.
Wow.
And I've been amazed at some of what they've shared. For example, firefighters on the witness stand. They're not just asking factual questions. They're saying, what did you smell when you went into the house? How hot was it? They want the jury to feel like they are with the firefighter in that house. They want them experiencing it so that they will ultimately make the decision that they want them to make.
Wow. So which really brings trying to understand your customer or your prospect to a whole different level, because they're doing that with 12 people in essence, is what you're saying. Is they're trying
That's
to
correct.
figure out what appeals to them and how they have
That's
to
right.
approach their, okay.
Yeah,
Very
you talk
cool.
about committee selling. They got to get every one of them turn their key. It's not a majority. You got to get them all.
Yeah, that's great. What was your
So they are
feeling?
leveraging emotion as a part of it, and
Yeah.
it's fascinating because they're doing exactly what salespeople need to do when they're selling. Only they have to get a dozen yeses. We may need to get a couple, not necessarily a dozen.
Yeah,
And their
oh,
whole
sorry.
focus is on the emotional journey.
Hmm. Yeah, really good. The thought this is making me think about is this idea of discovery when
Yes.
you're interviewing, right? And
Yep.
sometimes that can be pretty painful for the prospect, because
Yes.
it's like an interrogation at times. I've sat through some of these. I'm like, oh my God, I'm looking at my watch and trying to crawl underneath the desk and sit
Yes.
on the same side as the buyer.
Yes.
So what's your thought about making that more pleasant?
I don't know if it's necessarily the word pleasant,
Okay.
but here's the problem with the word discovery. What salespeople think about with discovery is questions they're going to ask, information they're going to share, qualify and differentiate, right? That's the core of what they're going to do. Very few ask themselves this question. What does the person on the other side of the desk get out of this interaction with me? How do they become wiser as a result of spending time with me? So I prefer the expression consultation.
Mm,
If you were going for a medical consultation, let's say you had a knee injury, you would go there expecting to answer some questions, wouldn't you?
exactly.
Right? But you're expecting to come away from that consultation with information that you're wiser so that you can make informed decisions. If we had that approach in sales, prospecting would be so much easier. Everyone would take a meeting from us because you're going to meet with me. Wow, that's great, because they know they become wiser about their circumstances from spending some time with me. But everybody knows just about every interaction you have with a salesperson is egocentric. I'm going to ask some questions. I'm going to tell you about our stuff. Then I'm going to give you a proposal. Completely egocentric. But if we take it from the other side and we challenge ourselves with this question, what does the person that you're meeting with get out of this meeting? And you know what the most common answer I get, Harry, when I ask salespeople that? A deafening silence.
Mm.
Hadn't thought about that. Well, you start making that the forefront, and that changes how you prospect, and it changes what you'll experience during that interaction. When someone feels like they're going to learn something from you, because one of my favorite questions to ask salespeople, who knows more about the world of potential solutions in your industry? You or the people you sell to? Not one person has ever said to me, oh, the people I sell to know much more about the world of potential solutions in my industry. It's never happened. So you absolutely know more than they do about your world of potential solutions. But if you come in there with an egocentric approach and you're just going to lecture and ask the questions so that you qualify them, they're not going to feel like they've come away from this interaction saying, boy, this was a great investment of my time. Right? Very rarely do you hear someone say that about a sales experience. This was a great investment. Notice I didn't say use, an investment of my time.
And why do you use investment of your time there instead of use?
Because investment I mean, when you think of how busy people are, we're meeting with executives most often. They don't have minutes to waste. They can't use minutes. They have to invest minutes. So when you decide to invest those minutes with me, your expectation is you're going to come away wiser about your circumstances, not
Oh,
just sit through a sales pitch.
that is so good. And this is probably a big reason why prospects go dark and just ghost people, salespeople, because they're not seeing any real reason to invest the time in them. What's your thought?
Absolutely. I mean, Harry, think
Yeah.
about this. If your expectation was just like when you go to the doctor, that every time a salesperson reached out to you, that you would come away from that interaction wiser, better informed, so that you could make wise decisions, you would take those meetings all day long, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
If you knew going to the doctor, you weren't going to come away knowing anything about your circumstances. You wouldn't know what you got going on, wouldn't know what your options are, wouldn't know where to go from there. You wouldn't bother going. Right? You just say, my knee hurts. It's going to keep hurting. It's no point in going to the doctor because the doctor's not going to tell me anything.
Yeah.
And when I use that metaphor, salespeople say, well, that's different. It's a doctor. They have special medical training. And then I come back to my question. Who knows more about the world of potential solutions in your industry? You or the people you sell to. You are Yoda. You know stuff that they don't know.
Yeah, this is, in some sales, I'm not going to say many, but I've seen some want to hold back because they think that providing value for their prospect is when they buy their stuff, not every step of the way. If you look at it and say, how can I provide value or give them something useful, if you will, at each meeting so that they're feeling like, hey, this lead guy, he's pretty sharp. He's actually helping me with my business and
Right.
no one else is. So when it comes down to having a choice to with whom to do business with, then you stand out as one who sells differently, I think. Thoughts?
So, Harry, let me ask you a question. What did you pay me to be on your podcast today?
Uh, I think zero. I think is the
Zero.
number that comes to mind.
And for the folks watching this podcast, what are they paying to watch it?
Zero again.
Okay. So you may be saying to yourself, now, wait a minute. These things that Lee is sharing, isn't he risking consulting dollars? Right? Shouldn't that be saved for when he's consulting with a client and only tell those people that are giving him money? I mean, that's the same mindset that you're talking about, Harry. But here I am freely sharing information. Why? Because if someone says, boy, Lee really has an expertise in this arena, me sharing a nugget or two is not going to be, oh, he just learned this nugget on Harry's podcast. So now I don't need to hire Lee. I don't need to talk to him because I got the whole thing. So I think the fear that salespeople have that I'm going to tell too much hurts them more than helps them.
Yeah, so good. Hey, can we shift gears a little bit on,
Sure.
I hear this a lot about sales process, and sellers think that they have to put the buyer into a process and then they question why the buyer is not buying according to their process. What's your thought about this whole thing?
So the first thing is you say sales process to most salespeople and they go, "Oh, no." And I always come back with this question. If you can name one company, just one, that is considered a sales powerhouse, that lets their salespeople wake up in the morning and let them go sell whatever way they want, they'll quit the business. There isn't one. Any company that is considered a sales powerhouse prescribes the appropriate method to sell for the company, founded in process. Now, you added a little bit of color there when you said forcing the buyer through this process. To me, that would indicate there's a flaw in the process design. If you're having to force somebody to go through it, there's a design problem. So I'm a huge proponent of having a process, but you have to make sure it's the right process.
Beautiful. So like when I think of forcing, so an example might be is
Mhm.
that some buyers, we all know that we've heard the data statistics that buyers are pretty far through the sales cycle before they actually want to meet with salespeople.
Mhm.
So if they're at this point where they're ready and they don't want to reinvent the wheel, and they've gone through 4 different vendors, whatever the number is,
Right.
the last person comes in
Mhm.
and the buyer's like, I don't really have time for this. It was nice
Mhm.
enough for me to give you a meeting, but does the seller need to make some adjustments there, or what's your thought?
So let's come back to the very beginning where you're talking about the statistics you were citing. I'm turning that number on its ear.
Okay.
And the way I'm doing that is in working with clients around their prospecting approach, reaching out to those who weren't seeking an alternative, founded in this one word. I'm going to share this word with our audience that when you start thinking about it, when you say, boy, how do I get someone to pay attention to me when I'm prospecting? The answer is in this one word. It's unknowingly. Harry, if I said you're unknowingly doing something, don't you want to know what you're doing? That's not necessarily what, right? So that's the whole idea around unknowingly. Brings emotion into it because whenever we make a decision, we believe we're making a decision based on the full information available to us. And then someone comes along and says, by the way, you're unknowingly overpaying for groceries. Really? What, how am I doing that? I want to hear what you have to say. So, for example, I have a client in the property tax space, and they found most companies are overpaying in property taxes. So we developed a prospecting approach based on unknowingly. The reach out approach is we found that most companies in your industry or in your geography are unknowingly overpaying on their property taxes. What do you mean? That one
Beautiful.
word, unknowingly, is so tremendously powerful. And so once I hear unknowingly, I may have been in a passive state, but once I start learning what you have to say, now I go from passive to an active state. And now I want to take the conversation further. So I want to be the one that sparks that conversation, sparks someone to pick their head up and say, you know what? I need to take a closer look at this. The scenario that you described, salespeople say, I love to get leads. You tell them that it's strictly a prospecting job, and they're like, oh boy, I want leads. But when you have an active buyer like that, they think they know everything. They feel like they've done their homework, but I'm yet to find any prospect that knows more than me about my industry. Name the industry, right?
Right.
And you have salespeople that, and they'll agree with you, but they feel that they do. And if you think about how the human mind works, we want to commoditize everything into a grid, right? Here's my criteria. Here's where I can get it. Check all the boxes. And for the criteria that I have, who's got it for the cheapest price? Procurement does that on paper. We just do that naturally in our heads. So for those people who say they want leads, they want to rethink that. I'd rather be the one that sparks the interest in a topic saying, You want to reevaluate what you're doing here. Maybe you're inefficient in something. Maybe you didn't realize you were out of compliance. Maybe you didn't realize that there was a way to automate something that you're doing manually. You just accepted this is the only alternative that I have. I'm working with a client in the filter space, and they're a manufacturer, and they sell directly to the end user. All of their competitors sell through distributors, which means there's another mouth to feed when you look at cost basis. So right off the bat, the competition is charging more because of their approach to selling. So again, using this theme, unknowingly overpaying for filters.
So freaking awesome.
Right? One word.
Okay,
if you
one
want to know
word.
the secret for prospecting, come up with that. What do you know that they don't know but need to know now? If you can answer that question, your prospecting game will completely change. Your dance card is going to get full really fast.
That is such money, Lee. That's worth way more than the price of admission here for you.
We didn't charge anybody, Harry.
Love it. All right, I've got another question. You switch topics real again here for you. It's when the small business owner says, I think I need to hire a sales team. What do you say to that person to help them fish that out, if that's true or not? And what's your thought on it?
It's a question. Tell me why. Why do you think you need to hire a sales team?
So the first thing is I want to grow my sales. I've done everything online. Now I feel like I need salespeople because I've reached the pinnacle of what I can do online.
So what I find is there are a lot of business owners that when they say, I want to go hire salespeople, they want to abdicate the sales throne. I want to get away from, I don't want to do sales, or it's this nebulous thing. I'm not really a salesperson. I want to be out of it. You can't outsource sales unless you figured out the recipe. Can't do it. And you can't just say, I'm going to go hire a six-figure salesperson and they're going to figure out how to sell my stuff. You'll be very disappointed in the results. So I use a metaphor of a doctor's office for that entrepreneur who says, I'm ready to start adding a salesperson in my organization. If you think about what a doctor's office is, it's the most efficient business with such clarity in the roles, right? The doctor doesn't take your blood pressure. The doctor doesn't take your money. Those are other people, junior level people in the organization. If you think about the doctor is the most expensive person in that practice. So needs to be able to interact with patients in the fewest minutes possible, still creating a great experience for the patient, fewest minutes possible. So everybody else in that practice, their job is to make it so that the doctor can use the fewest minutes and be effective, right? The receptionist, schedule that next appointment, deal with the money, deal with the insurance. Nurse practitioner, take the blood pressure, take the vitals, weigh them, all that good stuff. The chart ready for me, the doctor, to do my thing. Well, in most cases, the business owner is the doctor in this metaphor. Most expensive, most valuable minutes. So instead of saying, I'm going to hire a salesperson, that I'm just going to outsource this, I'm going to hire a salesperson, let them go do their thing, which is going to be a high risk of failure. Look at the things that only you can do as the business owner. Only you have the expertise, just like the doctor. Now, in the doctor's world, it's easier because there are rules and laws that say these are the things that only a doctor can do. But take that same approach as the business owner. These are the things that only I can do, should do. All the other things around new client acquisition, you hire a junior level person to do. And if you're big enough, maybe you're hiring two people to do it. And the hope is that that junior level person, if I can use a football metaphor, they're going to take you from the end zone maybe to the 30, and you take it the rest of the way across the field. Over time, as they're working with you, maybe they can go from the end zone to the 40, end zone to the 50, end zone to the other side of the field. And maybe ultimately that person, after they've spent a lot of time with you, the organization, and how you work, can take it end zone to end zone. But if you think of from a cost basis perspective, starting with a junior level person as opposed to going out and hiring a six-figure person and say, here's what you're going to do. Doesn't make sense for that business owner to do prospecting. Need someone else to do it. And if they're going to have inbound leads, it doesn't make sense for the business owner to be that first conversation. Have someone else qualify it, make sure it's the right person. Tee up the conversation and prep the chart for the doctor, the business owner, so that they can take the conversation from there.
Oh, so good. I mean, you just really mapped it out nicely for those that are thinking along those lines. Really, there's no one better that understands their company and product and service support, is more passionate about it than the owner, and to just pass that off to someone else and then hopes that, you know, here's my $100,000 investment in sales or more. And that person leaves and you have to start all over because the person wasn't succeeding, or you lose patience. It's really, it can be a nightmare and just the complete money pit, but you really spell it out very nicely. So,
And as an exercise, I actually do this with that small business owner, where I'll lay out a chart. We'll list all the tasks associated with new client acquisition. And then we'll say, is this a doctor task, a practitioner task, is this a receptionist task? Now we gain clarity on the different roles, and we say, okay, you're the doctor. Here are the only things you're going to be involved in new client acquisition. This is what we need to go hire for, which again is a fraction of the cost of saying, hey, I'm just going to go hire a salesperson and hope for the best at six figures. It's a very expensive mistake.
Exactly. So what would you say then to the business owner, like you described, says, well, I'm not really cut out for sales, or I'm not a salesperson? What would you say to them to help them reevaluate?
First of all, I tell them, first about every small business owner says, I'm not a salesperson. I don't really know sales. And what I find is most of those people are the best salespeople because they don't realize they're doing things so effectively. And so I help them to have some self-confidence that, hey, you can play this role right here.
Exactly.
And if you're playing this role and you have other people playing the other roles that you shouldn't be doing, don't have the time to do, maybe don't have the knowledge or skill set to do, I have a winning proposition.
Very nice.
And I'm yet to have any sales business owner, any business owner, we've talked about this doctor's approach, say, yeah, I can't do that. Because we're carving out the functions that they can and should do.
Right. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, you bring the value, Lee. Massive value, I would say.
Thank you, Harry.
What did we leave anything out that you wanted to share with the audience of small business?
Well, you don't have 16 hours, do you? I think we did a great job today. I think we gave them a lot to work with.
Awesome. And where would people find more of your mastery, sir?
Well, first of all, they can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm constantly sharing content there. On a weekly basis, I put out, you've probably seen the videos on Lee's lessons. So little nuggets like what we talked about here today. You can go to my website, salesarchitects.com. And if you're intrigued by the books that we've talked about today, Sales Differentiation, you can find them both on Amazon or wherever you prefer to buy your books.
And Discovery, when is that coming out?
Not until 25.
Okay.
Fall 25.
We've got reading to do before then.
You got some homework.
All right. That and watching Law and Order and picking up sales strategies from attorneys on TV.
Amen.
Great stuff, Lee. It's been a blast.
Thank you,
All the
Harry.
best to you. Thank you.